Okay.
Yeah, welcome everyone who's watching. And I'm Andrew. I'm just the intern. So I'm just going to hand it right over to Jason to go ahead and get us started.
Terrific. Well, thanks everybody for joining. We have some amazing people that are part of this panel today. Carolyn Swords, Khadevis Robinson, Reggie Rusk, and Matt George. I'm going to let them introduce themselves. I'm sure it could go on for a long time because it's just incredible. Their list of accomplishments is many pages long. Why don't we start with you, Matt? Why don't you introduce yourself, and then you can pass the buck to any of the other three panelists.
Yeah, sounds good. My name's Matt George. I'm currently the president and CEO of the Children's Home Association in Peoria, Illinois. I've been in nonprofit work my whole life, helping kids, but it started with sports, and it started with using sports as an avenue and leverage to be able to raise money for good, and started raising money at age 16, and now I'm 51 and still raising money and raised millions of dollars all over the country. And my cousin was Jeff George, and is Jeff George, the former NFL quarterback. I ran his foundation for many years, and then that transitioned into helping kids. And my motto is change lives, save lives every day. And we here in Illinois, we have 1,700 kids a month that flow through our agency. And everything from foster care to residential to behavioral health to homeless youth. And I keep thinking, as I get older, what am I going to do when I grow up? And I think it's past that now. It's just now I am what I am, and it's to help people and help the community. And I'll leave it with this. I think it's everybody's duty to take care of their community, no matter who you are and where you are. And so I truly believe that, and that's why I do what I do. So I'm going to kick it to Carolyn.
Thank you. Hi, everyone. Thanks for having me. My name is Carolyn Swords, and I just retired from a 10-year professional basketball career, which was both in the WNBA for teams like the Chicago Sky, New York Liberty, Seattle Storm, and Las Vegas Aces, but also overseas. I got to play in Italy, Turkey, Spain, Australia, and Poland. And while I was active in the WNBA, I was also a member of the Players Association, so helped to negotiate the most recent collective bargaining agreement. Launched a partnership with Rock the Vote, which was really exciting, and really proud of what we were able to do last season in the bubble with our social justice focus, both on voting rights, racial equality, Black Lives Matter advocacy, LGBTQ advocacy. So this space of where sports and service meet has always been really important to me, and was lucky to get connected with Athletes for Hope thanks to another great WNBA player, Ruth Riley. And Athletes for Hope has done a great job of helping me connect wherever I am, particularly when I was moving to Vegas. And that franchise was kind of getting their sea legs still. So I will kick it to Khadevis.
It's great seeing you, Carolyn, and everybody else. Thanks for having me on. My name's Khadevis Robinson. I'm a two-time Olympian, 7 to 9 time USA national champion. I'm currently the head cross-country coach here at The Ohio State University, and been involved with Athletes for Hope for some time. Absolutely love it. Love what they're doing. Love what they've done, and I'm excited to continue to do those things. And I think the impact that they have made has been awesome. And I like what Matt said. It's interesting when he brought that point up. It reminded me of one of the sessions that Athletes for Hope have, when they ask you, do you think it's your responsibility? Do you think it's your duty? What do you think? And it always kind of throws individuals off, because some people are like, well, I think I should give back, but I don't know if it's my responsibility. So we love being a part of Athletes for Hope, and look forward to continuing. And I'll pass it on to Reggie.
Reggie, we got you on mute. There you go.
Sorry about that. Well, I appreciate, being a part of this panel, and it's always great to be around like-minded individuals like you all. And A little bit about me. I'm a former professional football player. Played 6 seasons in the NFL with 3 different teams: Tampa Bay Buccaneers, Seattle Seahawks, and the San Diego Chargers. I was injured in 2000, couldn't get back on the field. So I got into the work of helping young athletes. And I just felt like for any of us who had the fortunate enough to make it, giving back to the younger generation and also just helping kids in the community. I really believe that's something that we all need to do. And I think that's a part of, just us going out and making it and seeing that the world is a lot different than the neighborhoods that we come from for most of us. So I've always, since college, made sure that I went back and spoke to kids at my high school or kids that were in the community. In 2018, I created my own nonprofit. I wanted to make sure that I was using sports as a vehicle for me to be able to touch kids as far as the mentorship, financial literacy, educational literacy, because those are some of the areas that I was very passionate about. And I've been doing the nonprofit work since 2018. Definitely a challenge, when you're getting into it and it's just a love and it's a passion. But when you actually make it official, it becomes a little work. But, it's something that I definitely am happy with. I think making a difference in not only my community, but helping other kids who strive to be great in their lives. I think that's just an important thing that, us as former athletes or former coaches or whatever the case may be, I just think that's something that we need to be doing. So I'm very pleased to be a part of the panel. I look forward to building relationships with, hopefully everyone on the panel. And maybe we can do some things here in the future.
Thank you, Reggie. Thank you, Matt, Carolyn, and Khadevis as well. I'm Jason Belinkie. I'm the COO of Athletes for Hope. And it's such a privilege to work with athletes like you all. We've been around for 15 years. We exist to create conversations like this. And we help athletes volunteer and become spokespeople for causes and organizations that they care about. I do want to transition over to what we call our causeway, which is our philosophy in helping athletes connect with causes that they care about. And it'll help transition into the rest of our panel. So for us, when we work with athletes, we talk about this process of getting involved in the community. And it's not always linear like it is in this document. Sometimes you start further down this causeway than the educate phase. But in describing kind of how it would ideally go, education is kind of the first step in the process, thinking through issues that matter to you, gradually transitioning into that discovery, thinking through kind of what connects with what your passions are. You might have somebody that was afflicted by a disease in your family or friends. And you start to think about, okay, here's something that I really want to make an impact on. You would then move along to the connect phase, which would just be getting out there, like all of you who just talked, really doing the work, and feeling out where you feel like you really enjoy giving your time to. It might be multiple organizations, it might be one, but being willing to put in that time to make an impact. Eventually, you might find an organization or a couple organizations that you really want to delve in deeper, do regular visits with, really get to know the people that are there, make sure that they know that you're committed to not just going once, but going on a regular basis. And then eventually, if you continue to work with that organization over time, you might move to the partner phase, which is all about kind of being synonymous with the organization. You might speak at their annual event. You might join their board of directors. You might do a public service announcement with them. And lastly, we have the proceed with caution here, which is establish your own organization. And we say that because a lot of athletes in the beginning of their career get the guidance that they should create their own foundation without necessarily going through the process of truly thinking through, this is my cause, here's where the need is, and there's still a need after that analysis for me to create my own organization, and that I am willing to commit to doing that, even if I get traded or I leave this market and, I might retire and need to raise money around that, but just knowing everything that goes into creating your own organization. So we generally talk with all the athletes we work with about that philosophy and let them decide where they fit. So I'm going to stop sharing, but I would like to transition into and just thinking about your own causeway journeys when you first got involved in the community. And really thinking about the causes that matter to you. When did that start to happen? And Khadevis, why don't you kick us off with that question? You're on mute. There you go.
All right. Yeah, I think for me, it really started when I was in college. I went to TCU, it's Texas Christian University. And I'm a social work major. So my bachelor's degree is in social work. My master's is in public administration. But part of the requirement for getting your social work degree, you have to do some internships and you have to do some field placement hours and volunteer. And so I volunteered at a school that was really close to TCU. And I was, to be quite honest with you, I did it because I had to do it. It was a requirement for my major. But I really loved it. I really enjoyed it. And the funny thing happened is that after I finished my volunteer hours and I graduated and I became a professional athlete, we didn't have Facebook and all those things when I was in school. And some years later, I get contacted by a young man who was grown, and he thanked me. He said, I know you don't remember me, Mr. Robinson. I knew something was up then, but he said, I know you don't remember me, but I'm that little kid that you worked with at the school next to TCU, and I wanted to thank you for everything you've done. And it gave me chills. So my journey started when I was at TCU.
Incredible. Yeah, you never know where your impact ends. So Reggie, why don't we kick it over to you? When did this journey start for you?
I think the journey really started for me maybe my freshman year in college. So like I said earlier, I would go back during my breaks from college. I would go back home and I would always go to the school and speak to the kids that were, graduating behind me. So having those deficiencies in your life as, a young man, you see the same thing in those kids that are still there. So the one thing that I always remembered from high school was no one ever came back. No one ever gave us that bill of confidence to tell us that we can be successful and we can make it out. So that was one thing that I knew that I wanted to do. I didn't know exactly what I was doing. I just knew that I wanted to be involved. I know I wanted to give back in some capacity. So I think that was the moment when I started going back to the school, started speaking to the kids, just wanting to do something. And, when those kids come back and they're like, wow, thank you, or I'm bringing shoes from college back and giving them away, it really touched a lot of those guys that were behind me. And I just knew that that was something special. And it was definitely something that I wanted to do and continue to do. So I would definitely say the moment I stepped on a college campus, I wanted to give back to my high school.
Yeah, Reggie, such a great point. I will never forget the first workshop Athletes for Hope ever did was with the U.S. women's national soccer team. And Abby Wambach was an unknown at that point. And she made a very similar comment to you, which was that, I may not be a known entity on the national stage, but when I go back to my hometown in Rochester, they listen and it makes a huge impact. So you are totally right. Carolyn, why don't you kick it off and let us know when your journey started?
I think similar to Reggie and Khadevis, I think I really connected the dots of, I'm an athlete and there's this opportunity to give back once I was at Boston College. And that's very much part of the, ethos at BC, being a Jesuit university, really trying to use your talents, being of service to others, and they have a very robust community service program. I think, service was sneakily in my life. I was a Girl Scout growing up, and our family our dinner discussions were all about kind of what's going on in the world, and if we kind of taught if we have a capacity to share ideas and help, then it's our duty to kind of pitch in and do what you can. It is what it is kind of a bad word in our household. So, thankful for that upbringing and kind of that mindset, and then the ability to kind of connect my persona as an athlete as it becomes more of your identity to the opportunity to serve others and potentially be a role model, especially to other tall young girls. I'm very tall myself, and so that means a lot to I think tall middle school girls to be able to see that it's going to be okay. So, having a strong foundation and kind of making those connections, I'm really happy that I had that opportunity from a young age.
Awesome. Matt, how about you? When did your journey start?
Yeah, I went a different path. I was a pretty good athlete, but I was actually always surrounded by all-star athletes. And so I actually leveraged the talent around me in college and throughout the NFL, being around different players. But it actually started with me at age 16. I was a tennis player, and a friend of mine was in high school and diagnosed with cancer. And one day he's sitting next to me, and the next day he's not on this earth anymore. And I felt it was the first time something ever hit me like this. And so I knew I could do something. I didn't know what it was. So I did my first fundraiser for their family to help defray the costs of the funeral. And I raised $3,500 at age 16. And I gave the check to the family. And I'll never forget handing it to them and the feeling that I had knowing that I had that power to make someone feel better. And I took that, I told you earlier, my cousin, Jeff George, and he was a football player, but we were also roommates. And so at that same time, we were at the University of Illinois. We were around the volleyball team where there were 2 Olympians on the Illinois volleyball team. There were 14 players on Jeff's Illinois team that played in the NFL. And it was the time when the Flying Illini were there with Kendall Gill and all of those NBA players, Nick Anderson. And so we hung around those guys. And what had happened was I started putting together fundraisers, and I grabbed everybody and we did autograph sessions. And so because of cancer, there was a kid outside of Champaign, Illinois that had leukemia, and we did an event for his family. And then next thing you know, Coach Lou Henson of the basketball team helped. And that kind of transformed. At the end of 4 years at the University of Illinois, we looked up and we'd raised $500,000 and didn't even realize it. And I said, wait a minute, the impact that we can do, even though I'm not a star athlete, but boy, I sure know a lot of them. And as Jeff went into the NFL, he did a lot of things. He got a bad rap for a lot of things, but what most people don't realize is he was building churches with his own money. He was doing things for kids that were abused, and we did it all behind the scenes, and it actually was life-changing. And an NFL career, Reggie knows this, you're an injury away. It's a short career. God bless Jeff with 14 years in the NFL. It's rare, but it gave us that avenue. I was still young. I was 31 years old, and his NFL career is over, and here, what do you do? Well, what you do is you take care of your community and you take care of people's lives. And that's kind of the again, now 20 some years later, where we're at. But it has been an interesting and fun journey, and a lot of stories behind it.
Yeah, Matt, actually, that's a great transition. Jeff is a great example of somebody who clearly inspired so many, especially the recipients of his work, I'm sure, even though it was behind the scenes. So I'd love to know, in thinking back on this journey of yours, envisioning whether there was an athlete or another community leader who you looked up to who helped inspire your involvement in the community. Would love to bounce it back to you, Reggie. and your journey to get to this point, if there's somebody or more than one person that comes to mind.
Yeah, I think, early on, I just didn't know what it is I was doing. I just knew that I wanted to give back and do these things. But I would say when I was fortunate enough to make it into the NFL, Warwick Dunn really inspired me. His foundation where they give homes to single parent women, and that was like very inspirational because I came from a single parent household, and it just, seeing those type of stories makes you want to do more. And it's weird. I think most of us probably feel the same way. You're doing as much as you probably can, but it seems like you're always thinking, what can I do more? And that's how I am. I'm always trying to figure out who can I network with so I can learn something and bring that to where I am, and how can I help more people. But I would definitely say I look at other people, I get inspired by things that they are doing. And I definitely want to model myself after those people who just inspire me. But Warwick Dunn, that was his story is awesome story, from what he grew up dealing with, but then to pay it forward and build these homes for these people, that it was very inspirational.
Yeah, Reggie, again, you highlight lots of athletes who and really inspire me too. Warwick is one of the founders of Athletes for Hope. Know his story very well. Unfortunately, his mom was gunned down while she was on duty as a policewoman, and left behind 5 kids, including Warwick. He was the oldest one. As you said, went along to establish an organization in the dream that she had for her family. And I'm sure you already know this, but ended up building many homes, including one that Deshaun Watson lived in, which is just incredible. Carolyn, why don't we kick it to you? Any person that comes to mind that inspired you in this journey?
Yes, I'd say that there's probably like a big 3 in terms of WNBA legends and veterans who, and 2 of whom I was really fortunate to be teammates with in my 2nd year. So as I mentioned, Ruth Riley, she's an incredible role model and player. Hall of Fame. All 3 of these athletes are Hall of Famers. Her involvement with different causes and her ability to lend her voice and her efforts to different groups, and she's very attentive when she's ever with a group of kids, and admired how she was able to take care of business on the court and then also be able to throw her energy into any number of projects. Same thing with Swin Cash, who took the foundation route and runs an incredible foundation for kids and helping them to not only work on their basketball skills, but then giving them the tools to keep moving through high school and college graduation. And, another phenomenal player. And she has also transitioned from being an athlete to a broadcaster to now she's at the front office for the Pelicans. And I'd say the last WNBA player is Tanika Catchings, also foundation athlete, similarly, really serving the youth in the community. And all 3 of these women were also very active on the Players Association, which, I think when you come into a league, and for a very long time, our sport is our hobby, and then it eventually becomes our job. And that's a very different dynamic. And so being able to be knowledgeable about the business and understanding that while there are these very competitive elements of it, you can still serve not only your fellow players, but then the community at large. And so having those 3 really strong role models when I came in as a rookie 2nd year player was phenomenal, and just have always tried to kind of chase them in terms of the example that they've left, and be able to leave the league even stronger than when they came in.
You've definitely done a great job in following that example. I mean, we have thousands of athletes, and you're one of the most active and always doing things. So clearly they left a great impact. Khadevis, what about you?
Yeah, Rayford Johnson. Rayford, when I first became a professional athlete, I moved out to Santa Monica, California. Rayford was out in LA, and there was a foundation called the LA 84 Foundation, the Ready, Set, Go program. And I was amazed that Rayford Johnson, who's a legend, how active he was. And in that, during those times, he was always older, but yet he was still energetic, still excited, still lived with vigor, and really loved to give back. So I used to look up, to Rayford, and I just couldn't believe it. I couldn't believe how much everyone respected him, but also how much energy he had, and how much that he really wanted to give back. And I used to think, man, I have to be able to do that, because if he can do it, I can do it also. So it was amazing to be able to watch that in person and hopefully mimic it a little bit.
You've definitely mimicked it in many things that you've done, Khadevis. So Matt, I don't know if Jeff was the person that you would name, but yeah, you're shaking your head. So let's hear who else it would be, because I'm certain someone inspired you a lot earlier than when you met Jeff.
Yeah, this is actually probably one of my most fun stories. Is I was 19 years old. I was had an apartment at the U of I, and my idol growing up was Walter Payton. And I had his posters on my wall and everything. And back then we didn't have computers and cell phones and all of that. And this was probably in 80, 89, 90. And he had a foundation, the Walter Payton Foundation, on Gulf Road in Schaumburg. And I'd leave a message and leave another message, and kept leaving messages. And I'm laying in bed one morning, I pick up the phone, and it's Walter Payton. And he goes, "You're one persistent son of a you-know-what." And I said, he goes, "What do you want?" And I said, "Well, I want to raise some money, and I have an idea." And he goes, "Do you know how much I charge?" And I mean, he was really, I didn't know if he was joking with me, or I couldn't even believe I was talking to him. And long story short, he invited me up to his offices, and I don't know why. I rode up there, and I met with him, and he said, "I'm $40,000 for a 2-hour appearance." And I go, "Well, I don't have any of that." And he said, "Well, what do you want to do?" And I told him my story, and I said I wanted to raise money for cancer, and I need him there. And he said, "All right, I'll do it. I'll do it for $5,000," because he didn't think I'd say yes. And he threw in, "And I need a jet." And I go, "All right." And so I wrote, my grandma gave me $5,000 for books, or for college. I wrote him a check that I wasn't supposed to write for my schooling. I gave it to him. And then the whole drive home, I kept thinking, how am I going to find a plane? Long story short, I found one, and he came to the event. I sold it out. We raised $150,000, and really just kind of was the kickstart of my career. And I was taking him back to we had a limo, and taking him back to the airport, and he looked at me and he goes, "Use your persistency and use your bluntness and make good." And he left.
Wow. Well, Matt, you're helping me with these transitions to the next questions, because I was going to ask all of you kind of particular stories or moments that stuck with you during this journey. Clearly, that's one that no one could forget. Carolyn, what sticks out to you when you're thinking back on a moment or two over this time?
I think our last season, last year in 2020, we were in a bubble because of the pandemic, and the players were really adamant about, if we're going to have a season, a huge part of it. Sorry, I think I have a siren going by. 1 second. Okay, sorry about that. That we were going to be adamant about speaking out about racial inequality, about LGBTQ rights, and that we wanted to make sure that Black Lives Matter was a huge part of our messaging. And so wanted it on our jerseys, wanted it on the floor, wanted to make sure that we were talking about the lives lost. And I'm really proud of our Players Association and the Social Justice Council for the way that they really pushed for that to happen. I think it may have made initially some of the corporate entities a little nervous, because that can sometimes be seen as controversial. But I'm glad that this was a very unified messaging with both, the WNBA and the Players Association. And I'm really proud that it was noticed. And, thanks to the season being broadcast, because we couldn't have any fans, I think that the public really felt that. And so really a huge effort to my colleagues in the league, and really happy that, that was felt and appreciated. And that's a lot of effort, additional effort on top of trying to win a championship that my fellow players put in. And so I think seeing that as being part of this transformation that we're seeing in athletics, and athletes really having, I think, a bit more of an ability, not that they haven't, ever spoken out before, but I think, demanding that these causes and voices are heard is really great, and just excited to see where it goes from here.
Yeah, that's terrific. The WNBA has really been an incredible progressive leader over the years. I just saw today, actually, that 99% of WNBA players are vaccinated, which is
excited about that.
So, Reggie, why don't we transition over to you? I'm sure you have many stories and moments over time that you can remember, but tell us about one or two that really stick out.
I think the stories that really stick out the most are the ones where you really made an impact. And, when I got into, once I retired, and, when you're an athlete and you're forced to retire, it's like you don't know which direction you're going to go. You're just lost. And, I was no different, but I knew I wanted to work with kids still a little bit after I retired. So, now looking back, I impacted so many kids just based off of wanting to work with them athletically. And then I started seeing other areas where I can really make a huge impact. And now, the fruits of that labor is, some of these kids are married and having kids now, having a family. I have a WNBA player, Brianna Turner, who's very outspoken, and I love the messaging that the WNBA did with Black Lives Matter and a lot of those social justice movements. I have a couple guys that, I worked with early on. They're in the NFL, and they are now able to, get a taste of that opportunity. So I think those are the stories that really, really resonate, because, that's why we do what it is that we do, to give people a platform that we had or knowledge that we had, and now they're using it and making their lives better. And, those stories really mean the most, when you're invited to weddings and birthdays. So that just basically says that you're more than a coach to me. You are like family. The impact that you made, whether you thought it was small, it was really huge in my life, and it really changed me. So those are the things that really, keep me going, and really helps me the days that you don't feel like doing certain things. Those are the things that really wake you up and give you that energy that you need to go out and conquer the world, because you see the impact, you see these people's lives being changed. So I would say that, just watching and seeing former athletes that I've worked with doing big things in the world.
See a lot of head nodding from you, Khadevis. I'm guessing you have many great moments. Which one really stands out?
It's funny, because I think the moments that stand out the most came from my own personal failures, from me competing. When I competed, you get interviewed after the race, whether you do well or if you don't do well. And, typically we hear the same things when we finish competing. You hear athletes say they thank individuals or whatever may happen. And I've always made it a point to emphasize why I run, why do I do this? And there's lessons to be learned when you do well. And there's obviously lessons to be learned when you don't do well. And you never think individuals are really listening to you. You think they hear you, but not necessarily listening. So when I had one of my toughest moments when I didn't make the Olympic team in 2008, you know, I did an interview and I essentially said, if this is the worst thing that happens to me this year, I'm a blessed man. And so many people came up to me after that, and I didn't know they was following me. I didn't know they was my fans, none of that stuff. And they would say, I love your interviews. I love how you talk about how being an athlete, Athletes for Hope, how it relates to real life and how you can use the lessons you learned, the successes and the failures you learned from being an athlete to real life. So for me, every time a grandparent or a parent or a student athlete would come up to me and say, you know, I learned so much from you when you didn't succeed, because I can relate to that. That meant so much. And to this day, I still have people come up to me about that, because I think they really connected to the human aspect of really going for something so huge and not succeeding, but talking about how the sun's going to shine the next day, how your parents are still going to love you no matter what, how this journey is not over, how you can still continue to push forward. And so to me, that's the one thing that sticks out to me over my career and even now.
Yeah, seeing a lot of those messages over the last few days with people who, didn't make the team, came close, even the people that did make the team, consoling people that just missed. Matt, I'm sure it's tough to top the Walter Payton story, but any other moments that would stand out to you in this journey?
Yeah, I think from a different lens is I got to be in the background and watch athletes do things. So I got to see really what happened. I saw athletes that didn't want credit for things and did a lot of things behind the scenes. I saw just the opposite. I saw athletes do it for other reasons, and there's nothing wrong with that. It's just I got to see all angles of it. But what it really comes down to is the recipient, whether it's the kids or cancer patients or whatever it may be. And that's what it comes down to. It comes down to what Reggie was talking about. You want to see a lot of these kids become productive tax-paying citizens someday and have a family and get a job and take care of others and have respect. And I think those are the things that I saw from a lot of athletes. I think the disheartening thing was seeing athletes do a lot of good and then get pounded in the media for things that were really just kind of jokes, because I saw a lot of good. I saw Brett Favre do things for people all the time. And I saw, Junior Seau do things. And, you see these athletes do so many things, but they didn't really take credit for it. And I think that the older I get to, the more special it is to kind of rehash some of those stories and know that there's a lot of caring athletes and coaches out there that really can make change, not just in the town that they're in, but really their footprint is bigger than that. And, I truly believe they do. There is an expectation. It's a whole different debate, but there is an expectation to take care of people. And I've always believed that.
So speaking of making change, we know all of you are very passionate about giving back. I'd love to hear just a little bit more at the moment, particular social issue or cause that you might be working on. Reggie, I know you have your own foundation that you started a couple of years ago. Can you tell us a little bit more about some of the work you've been doing?
Yeah, I mean, my foundation definitely doesn't stop just with athletes, because we do other things in the community with families. I think I'm more so proud of, really hitting the ground running. And most athletes' mindset is like, I'm going to do everything myself. And I had that same attitude for a long time. And you realize that you can't make the impact that you want to make by yourself. And so I've been on this quest to partner with different organizations. And I've partnered with Every Kid Sport and Super Bowl of Caring. Those are two organizations, nationally known organizations that, work with kids. And I'm proud of the fact that I think, you know, we're building something where we're putting food pantries in schools where there's food insecurities in these communities where kids are, you know, they're leaving school and they're not eating. So I think we're on the path of being able to help thousands upon thousands of kids in that aspect. And the other thing that I'm working on that I'm pretty happy about is working with Every Kid Sport. I started the NFL Flag League here in where I live, and we can pretty much expand that all over the country. And working with them, we can now target kids that, you know, have been cooped up for a year because of COVID. Maybe they don't have funds due to COVID or because the parents are not able to work. So they are now going to pay the registration fees for kids that fit the criteria. Now I can go out and I don't have to raise the money. I just need to find the kids who fit the specifications and allow them to play and just have fun. I mean, you know, we all have grew up around sports and we know how it changed our lives. So me giving these kids that opportunity to change their lives and have fun in the process, because that's what it's all about before it becomes a job. You know, that's one of the areas that I'm just so thankful that, you know, people have come to me to be a part of it. And I think we're going to be able to help a lot of kids and families for the most part. So, you know, I think since getting into the nonprofit space, I think that, you know, those relationships right there really for now have meant a lot to me.
Yeah, I mean, nothing has been more important and more in the national spotlight than food insecurity. You know, you hear that a lot. Speaking of helping kids, Khadevis, I know you've done a tremendous amount of work in helping kids over the years. What are you focused on right now?
Spreading Khadevism. That's why I have the shirt on, Khadevism. And my job now is just to spread Khadevism in any way that I can. I look at it like it's a perfume or a cologne, and I just sprinkle a little on everybody that I meet. You know, during this pandemic, it's been a lot of uncertainty. And so my quote is, in times of uncertainty, be certain in yourself. In times of uncertainty, be certain in yourself. So, you know, when you're going through uncertain times, sometimes there's fear and doubt and all those types of things. But if you're certain on who you are, if you're certain on your why you're doing anything, it keeps you grounded, it keeps you confident, and it keeps your path moving forward. And so what I've learned is that this day and age, it's really important to really have a goal, have a focus. You know, when you're a professional athlete or you're competing, it's easy because you have that goal to be, you know, in NBA or NFL champion or whatever it may be. But sometimes when life hits you, like when this pandemic comes, you start to question yourself. And so Khadevism is saying, you know, why are you here? You know, what's your purpose? What's your goal? You know, and understand that as you're chasing that purpose and chasing that goal, there's going to be setbacks, but a setback is a setup for a comeback. And if you're certain in yourself, if you're certain that you're doing it for the right reasons, then that'll give you the energy to keep going forward. So for example, you have a lot of individuals that didn't make the Olympic team. And what they're staring at right now is waiting for 4 more years just to try to make another team. And so if you're not certain in yourself, you'll just say, forget that, 4 more years. But if you really know why you're doing it, not just to win the medal or make money or be popular, but so you can motivate and inspire others, it'll keep you moving forward. And to me, that's Khadevism. And I want to share that with as many people as I possibly can.
Love your passion, Khadevis. Always love facilitating panels with you because you can just feel that. So speaking of passion, Carolyn, what are you working on right now?
So continuing to pay attention to voting rights and what's happening in our democracy and on the Hill. I think we're all a little exhausted after the 2020 election, but another one's coming not too long from now. And there, especially at the state level, some really frightening legislation happening that is, frankly, voter suppression. So, working with Rock the Vote to make sure that we're paying attention to when bills like democracy reform are coming to the House and Senate at the federal level, but also trying to demystify some of these phrases so that voters are kind of prepared for what's coming, know where to turn, and just kind of amplifying expert resources, whether it's Rock the Vote or any of these other great organizations that work on this. So, I'd say that's always top of mind. And then with the pandemic, just making sure, similarly, getting expert information out there and resources about the vaccine and different resources on healthcare. I think it's really been pretty devastating to see how a lot of the issues that were simmering under the surface or kind of being pushed aside were really exacerbated from the pandemic. And so just trying to see how, in the midst of trying to come out of that, how can we help those who are most vulnerable?
Yeah, there's so many that are vulnerable right now, unfortunately. Matt, how about you? What are you working on right now?
Well, we're a very large agency. We've got 455 employees, and we've got 54 programs, and we have so many kids and families, and we see so much crisis and so much abuse and so much lack of parenting and drug and alcohol abuse and so on. It's hard to pick just one avenue, but I think the one thing when people ask me about what I do, typically nonprofits like to sell, we take care of kids. Well, kids is a wide range of age, right? My favorite age kid is 16, 17, 18, because that is the boy or girl that is about ready to make these decisions that could go wrong. And, I think it's our job. And I say this, I don't care whether you're a cook or me or foster care or whatever, that when people ask you what you do, nobody cares when you say I'm a social worker. They really don't, but they do if you say I take care of kids and I change lives and save lives. And I don't care what position you're in. And so I think that's what we do right now. We're focusing on, there's a lot of homeless youth and a lot of kids that have been abandoned in our United States. And that's bull. I mean, that ticks me off. And that's really the reason why I do what I do, because we see it daily, and it's pitiful. And just in the state of Illinois, to give you an example, there's 23,500 kids in the system. That means the state of Illinois is their parent. The state of Illinois doesn't need to be anybody's parent. And no state does. And so it's our job. And I think really, as long as I live, is to really fight for these kids, because these kids don't have people fighting for them, number one. And number two, every kid deserves a dream. And, the whole panel talked about it in different ways, but I don't care what the problem is, as much as there has to be people to kick down doors for these people, these kids that need help. And that is everyone on this panel, and that is all the athletes that we talked about. If anything, everyone does have a power to kick down a door or to open a door for somebody. And I think that's what I love about what I do.
Yeah, I love that philosophy. And clearly you guys are kicking down doors for other people and are making incredible impacts in the lives of the people that you've decided to give your time to. And you've done it so many times over the years. So, want to conclude with one final question for all of you, and thinking about that journey to get to this point. If there's kind of one lesson that's bubbled up through your experiences to share with the group, Reggie, why don't you kick it off and share whatever that might mean to you?
Repeat it for me. I was reading something.
Yeah, no problem. So if you're going to think back on your journey up to getting to this point, one lesson that kind of bubbles up through your experiences that you'd like to share with the group.
I think the biggest lesson, we're born into a situation. A lot of times we're not asked to be in situations that we're in. Some people are born into good situations, and some people are not born into good situations. So I just believe that just being a good person, just looking out for other people, doing whatever it is that you can. If God has graciously blessed us to have the success that we've had, whether big or small, I just think giving back and, I live by the model of, eternal life. And eternal life to me is when you touch countless numbers of hearts, you'll live forever because you're in so many people's lives and you've touched so many people. So I definitely believe that, and that's how I want to live my life, by just being a good person and doing whatever it is that I can do to help those who didn't ask to be in the situation that they're in. I could have easily, I was born in a situation, a single parent household, and everybody's not given that willpower to fight and resist those temptations and those things that try to derail us. So, that's how I want to live my life. And I hope that, partnering with other people who have the same mission in life is just change as many people as we can, and just affect the world. I think we need more of that. This pandemic has really shown us that we're one virus away from, who knows what, and people are really on the edge, and we need more people who want to give and do good in our communities as well as across the world, man. It's really disheartening when you turn on the news and there's always some negativity every day. So I think the most that we can do is try to spread a little love and joy and peace to as many people as we can.
Couldn't agree more. Thank you, Reggie. Khadevis, what lesson would you share with the group?
The lesson that I believe is most important is to realize why you're here. And what I mean by that is I think the universe or God or whatever you believe in put us all here for a reason. I say God put me here on purpose for a purpose. And what I mean by that is nothing's here by accident. The grass, your tonsils, nails, hair, oxygen, everything that's in the world, that's on earth, that's in the universe is here for a reason. If someone invents something, if you create something, you don't put an extra part on it. You just don't put an extra part on anything. So if there's no extra parts on anything that's been created, it has to mean that I'm not an extra part and you're not an extra part. It means you're here for a reason and a purpose. And I think once we find out what our reason, what our purpose, what our why is, why we're here, why we play a sport, why we play the sport we play, why we chose the major, why we chose this spouse or live in this city or whatever it may be, it keeps us on point and it keeps us, living with hope. And so to me, that's the main thing, is figuring out why you're here, why you're doing what you're doing, and giving it everything you have until you don't have any more left.
Love it. Thank you, Khadevis. Carolyn, what lesson would you share with the group?
I would say that especially I think in the sports philanthropy world, just being tied to sports, there's a tendency to then just start compare, whether that's comparisons that you're doing, looking around and seeing what other people are doing, or, external comparisons. And I would say, don't buy into that game, and, finding whatever cause or means of giving back that is most authentic to you, as long as you're approaching it with, I think approaching any person with empathy and compassion and really trying to lead with integrity, then, we need all of our individual passions to make this world a better place. And, I'm just so impressed by what my fellow panelists are doing in the world. I can't wait to go look up more of what they've been up to. And I just think we're all in this together. We all need these efforts, and have patience for whatever it is that you're trying to do. It's gonna just keep working. It's gonna pan out, and it's not about who does it best or one way, and just believe in what you're doing.
Thanks, Carolyn. All right, Matt, why don't you anchor us down here? What lesson would you share with the group?
Yeah, I would say you have to have passion. I tell my team here and all new employees that come in, you have to have passion for what you do, but you better have compassion for each other. And if you don't know what's going on to the person that you're working with, and they could be battling cancer, they could be a death in the family, or they could have originally been part of the system that we're helping to fix. And I get in trouble for saying this from an HR standpoint, but I do say it, is that if you don't have passion and compassion, go work at the mall, because we don't have time for people to commit and to say things and do things and not do them. This is serious business, and this is the business where, if you're working somewhere and selling tennis shoes, that's fine. But if you don't sell tennis shoes and you make less money, you still go home and go to bed. In our business, it's life or death. And so there's really no comparison. So it's serious business. And I respect what everybody on the panel is talking about, because they've seen it, they felt it. And if you listen to what every one of them said, it's true. There's no one in our business really cares about a pat on the back. Like, I don't need anybody saying, man, good job, that feels so good. But what is fulfilling is when a 14-year-old boy came up to me and he goes, Mr. George, thank you for making me barbecue. I've never had barbecue in my whole life. I'd always heard about it. That's a true story. And and that tells you how we take things for granted. This kid has never had barbecue, pulled pork barbecue. And that gave me the chills. Or, Mr. George, thank you for helping me get my driver's license. I taught a kid 20 years ago how to shave. He didn't have a dad. And so how do you shave when you turn age 15, right? And so those are the things that stick with me, not the, Matt, good job, you raised $1 million. Good job. So that's my message. Compassion, empathy, and passion.
You guys are just so inspiring. This has been such a fun conversation. I know we have 3 minutes left, and I have not given the audience any opportunity to ask questions up to this point. So I'll give you a minute. If there are any questions, feel free to either unmute or put it in the chat. Otherwise, we'll wrap up.
I think what everyone has said is very motivating and true words that needed to be heard after everything that has been going on and everything that's leading up to.
Thank you, Brandon. Really appreciate it and totally agree with you. All right. Well, I think we're going to wrap this up. Matt, Reggie, Carolyn, Khadevis, thank you so much. Most importantly, for everything that you're doing in the community. It's clearly making such a big difference. And you're right. We don't ask for pats on the back, but you are doing amazing work. And it's been such a pleasure talking to you. And I appreciate you taking the time to share your insight with everybody in this discussion.